Welcome, everyone. This is Nichel Anderson. I'm your host for Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond. For my podcast show here today, I am focusing on the next episode where I am gearing up for the finale of my podcast show here that ends the season in May. So that would be next month. The last Monday in May ends my podcast season. So let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining me. Today would be episode 48. It is entitled General Tekun Speaks Truth. So just a little bit about this podcast, if you're just joining me here, is that my podcast focus on short stories. Most of those short stories are featured. So my podcast here hones on mostly from my book, Mitsrayim. And I wrote that book many years ago. And it's now a theatrical production where I produced a stage play and episodes and a short film. Right now, that particular production is in the process to return. So I'm calling it the Prestige Return of MOLIAE stage play. And once I have those dates available, I will let you know so you can come out and support the production. That would be a bigger production with more characters from the book. And it would be my third time returning back to stage, just with a larger production. And once I have those dates, I'll announce that, okay? There's also an app that I do have for this podcast. The other apps that I rolled out towards the end of last year, I am revamping those, so you might not be able to have access to them. But if you have access to the Apple Store, you should be able to get this particular app there. You should. All right. So let me go ahead and do some highlights right quick. So again, this particular episode today is dealing with General Tekun. I really didn't highlight him in my first season when I started my podcast, but the second season I kind of hinted here and there. And then right towards the end, which was the month of December, where I just released a full short, that's where you kind of got an idea of who was this prisoner or what have you. And it was General Tekun that Nontu had, right? And he was talking in reference to. So something occurred then. So today we're going to highlight him in this episode. And of course, y'all just mentioned Nontu. Pretty much he's in the episode. But to kind of forward that story, where in season 1, he really wasn't named, only in a memory that Queen Hagar had. And that's before General Datara became a general. So it was way in the past. So I did that episode. If I remember to put that in the description, I'll list that episode. It's entitled Queen Hagar Remembers. And it was in season 1. And then I mentioned General Tekun in that scene. And that's where you also, the listeners of my podcast, finally, for the first time, heard about Ruling. Okay, so now fast forward season 2, we're going to focus on that. Now last week, the recap from last week dealt with my director clip notes, where I honed on episode 37 entitled Sisters of the Sudan, and then episode 38, King Milan Rise to Akun Rule. All right, let's go ahead and get started. If you like this podcast, please share it. And if you have time, log in to Spreaker and post something positive that you're enjoying these short stories or a particular episode, or you have a question about a particular character you want to get more insight into, please do. All right, so let's get started. For this week of my podcast show, Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond. For this week, episode 48, entitled General Tekun Speaks Truth. Opening scene. Deep in the tunnels below of Nontu domain near Sababre, we see Nontu, trusted soldiers of his regime, against the once known echo of Orion, walking in front of Nontu, as a few were a couple steps behind him, walking towards the room where the prisoner kept hidden from those above ground. Nontu was notified of the prisoner awakening by the assigned herbalist to assist in the healing and a brief of many changes of any condition or information the prisoner might reveal. There was a knock on the door in code by one of the soldiers that allowed it to open, and as the soldier stepped aside, it was Nontu that walked in, with his combative military attire and of shiny metals unknown to those of Tamat. He saw the prisoner, and within moments the prisoner saw him, still lying on his back, but now slightly propped up. The herbalist and some female attendants nodded as Nontu finally walked inside. Nontu, feeling more emboldened, spoke first to break through the intensity between all of them, for the prisoner had awoken. Nontu spoke first. "I see you are well, this Apsu." Nontu spoke with glee. The prisoner, coughing a bit, responded, "You are a fool to think you will gain success against Mitsrayim." He continued to cough. "Do you think you know where you are?" Nontu ignored his last statement. "Do you think you are bigger than the armies of Mitsrayim, led by King Malan?" Nontu shook his head in resistance. "I have many that," but the prisoner interrupted Nontu. "You have neither. Your Apsu settings are reduced by each moment forward." He grumbled a bit, the prisoner did, and continued on, speaking to Nontu in defiance. "You should have returned me back." "Never!" Nontu cut in of his refusal to the prisoner's persistence that he was not in the winning position. His voice rose in intensity to show his authority over the situation as he walked over to the other side of the room and moved over some papyrus items, reading them as the writings were by the herbalist regarding the prisoner's condition. The prisoner persisted. "I sense fear deep in you, Nontu." Within an instant, Nontu turned to face the prisoner, a bit shocked that he knew his name. The prisoner continued, slowly sitting up more, and as the herbalist and female attendants came to his aid to reduce the pain they saw in the prisoner, they continued to help as he sat up. The prisoner kept looking at Nontu throughout the adjustment of the attendants and the herbalist, helping him to sit up properly with less pain. The prisoner continued the eye contact with sheer force of intimidation. He spoke again against Nontu amongst all that were in the room. "Yes, I know who you are, and I know that you are aware of who I am. Not an ordinary soldier, but high importance to the crown of Mitsrayim." Nontu briefly looked away to regain his footing of the mind strategy being played by the prisoner. "So be it, General Tekun." Nontu was about to leave when General Tekun, with force of lightning and thunder, spoke. "Your choices have led you down a path. There are no running place to uphold your desire of authority to the alliance sent for position on Tamat." Nontu turned around abruptly and spoke with force. "You speak with little knowledge of the matters." Nontu walked up, closer to General Tekun, but General Tekun refused to back down. He spoke in return of such force of thunder to Nontu. They have lied to you. Atiwo and Sanel, the brothers of deceit. Rotin should have told you more of them. Natu stared down General Tekun of the truth engulfed the room, and as Natu stood defiant, I have many forces. Any deeds of them against me, I would deal with them upon necessity, with force. General Tekun shook his head and laughed. Ha 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 ha. In pain, but he still laughed. Ha 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 ha. It is not them that you will need to worry about. It's my dear old friend, King Milan, and my son. That fear will engulf you. You should take the wisdom I give you. And Orion's superiors, I suspect, is after you. Let them capture you, for staying here on Tamat will be your undoing. Atiwo and Sanel will turn on you. Natu, with rage, started to charge at General Tekun, and within seconds General Tekun reached for a hidden mid-half sword and raised it to Natu's neck. The soldiers that were at the doorway quickly ran in with raised weapons against General Tekun. But General Tekun, in his age years old of wisdom and military combat, spoke in authority. Tell them to step down. Tell them to step back, for I am in position to end you at this moment. Natu complied and spoke in his Orion language. Translation: Soldiers, stand down. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of Elarun, it is those with alliance with the rulership domain of both Enlil and Nagal presenting their findings against the leaders of Orion that reported to Enlil secret spies.
This concludes this week clip snippet for this episode. If you would like to listen to the full story, please visit my Patreon page. The information will be in the below description. Mostly every week, I will release only the clippet of the short story, and once you become a patron, you will have access to the full short story, what's going on next, and I do plan to release more director clip notes as well as a bonus of releasing a story. Thank you again for joining my podcast this week. Of this podcast, Nichel Anderson, Short Stories and Beyond. So long.